We are live. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Gabe? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. To get us started, why don't you tell us, who you are, where you're from, and how you got started in real estate in the first place?
Sure. I am from lovely Cape Cod. I work here as an attorney and associate broker at Killing Grover Real Estate, which is a brokerage here, as well as I have a coaching business for other realtors, uh, Accomplished RE, where we work or solely focus mostly on systems and process. So as opposed to teaching what to do, we look at more of what you're doing and how we can do it better. So implementing systems, implementing process, or tightening up the ones that you have in place.
Awesome. I love it. We're definitely going to have to jump into that more because systems and processes, when it comes to building a business, that is one of the most important things that you need to, stand up. So I'm glad you're on the show. So tell us, I mean, you didn't, you weren't born into real estate. How did you actually get started? It sounds like you're a lawyer. So you went through law school, you got out. How did you decide to, hop onto the real estate train?
Yeah, I think like most people, came into real estate by chance. Definitely wasn't by design. I wanted to work in New York City after getting out of college. I went to Syracuse University. A lot of people I knew, a lot of my network went down to New York. So that's where I wanted to be. And I ended up at an analytics market research type firm. So my job was to understand everything there was about commercial, industrial, residential real estate, and provide quarterly trend reports to our clients. And from going from no background in real estate to, my first day I showed up, I had a stack of papers and a telephone. There was no computer, and it was just make these calls, talk to people in the market. I focused in the Southeast United States, find out what's going on so we can kind of build these reports. And from there, I learned a couple of things. One, real estate was interesting, and it was something that touched kind of all parts of our lives, whether it was where you live, where you invest your money, some combination of the two. And I also learned as I was on the phone with these people that these were important people. They had things going on. So just listening to my 2-minute survey was not top of their priority list. But what I did learn pretty quickly was information exchange and specific insights and knowledge about their market, about what was important to them, was something that they wanted. So as opposed to just saying, hi, I'd like to talk to you about ABC, I would kind of get into what was going on with them and have a real dialogue. And they appreciated it. I wasn't just some guy from New York calling them. And that's something that's kind of taken me throughout everything I've done in real estate was, information is important and it's kind of everywhere, but having that next level, that knowledge, that insights to provide, having a back and forth is really bad. It's not as valuable as money in real estate and investing, but it's probably second or right up there. And kind of after that basis, it was the contract and negotiation that I saw every day in real estate deals. Like I want to be more involved in that. And that kind of got me into law school and to where I am today. So I get to see all pieces, kind of end to end in the transaction uh, life of real estate and deals, and that's where I focus on. I like being involved in the A to Z of it.
I love it. I love it. So you're out in New York. Your friends kind of they went out to wherever you are right now, Cape Cod, and you happened upon a analytics firm, commercial analytics that you got a job at. You kind of got the bug. You realized the importance of data in real estate, and you decided that you wanted to be part of the contract side and you wanted to start, really negotiating in the deals. So you went and you got a law degree. After that point, it sounds like now you are a broker and a coach. And do you also invest in real estate yourself?
I do. We have a couple properties here. Mostly, though, my business focuses on the brokerage side, helping clients buy and sell, and then as an attorney, working on the closing process. Here in Massachusetts, it is an attorney state, so attorneys are involved in probably 98% of the transactions that do close. So I do get to be involved in the contract piece. I advise some clients. I've got friends and colleagues who are in the investment and financial planning business that I kind of freely consult with to kind of bounce ideas back and forth. As I'm sure you know, the last kind of couple of years have been all over the place. So just getting an idea of where we've been, where we're going, and what their clients are looking for is they're interesting conversations, and they're ones that are always evolving and changing. So I'd like to be involved, and I'd like to, hear all different kind of perspectives on it. 'Cause I don't think anyone has the definitive answers of what we're going to see in the next 3, 6, 9 months.
No, absolutely. And do you focus mostly on commercial, or do you also do single family residential, multifamily, non-commercial, stuff like that?
Now, being here in Cape Cod, it's pretty much single family residential is what we look at. We do have a lot of second and vacation properties, so that's where the investment piece comes in. But I think upwards of 80% of the residential here on Cape Cod is single family. So that is mostly what I see here.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I love the breadth of experience. It sounds like you've got your hands in quite a few things when it comes to real estate. I haven't had anybody on the show yet that is a lawyer that has focused on the legal side. So I would love to delve into that side of your business. I mean, obviously, real estate investors are the ones that are going to be listening to this show, and so I mean, especially speaking from my own perspective, when I first got into real estate, I didn't really understand the contract side of things. When I looked at a PSA, a purchase and sale agreement, I saw 30 pages of just words. So I didn't understand what was going on there. So speaking from somebody who is take the perspective of somebody that is, just getting started in real estate, looking at contracts, what is it that they need to know about, purchase and sale agreements, addendums, anything like that? What is it they need to know to execute a good contract? Besides, obviously, everybody should be taking it to their lawyer.
Yeah, that's a big question, and I want to make sure I don't get into the weeds here, and I kind of leave it as this is actionable and helpful. There's a lot of things that you want to consider, and as you say, it's helpful to work with someone, if not a lawyer, who is familiar with contracts, because while language can be boilerplate, there is a lot of different ways they can go, and depending on how clauses and addendums are set up, they might cancel each other out if they're in conflict, or how they're laid out. But the big thing with the contract is, one, to first understand what, as a buyer, seller, investor, you want to understand what is your responsibilities, what is being asked of you, and when. So that's the basics, making sure that what was discussed with during the offer, during the back and forth, that actually becomes part of the purchase and sale. That's the one thing that I see that we'll get to toward closing or right there, and it's like, hey, during the offer, they said they were going to do A, B, and C. That just hasn't happened. We look back and the purchase and sale was overlooked. So if something's agreed to before, make sure it's in there. Make sure that the dates, the timelines, the milestones match up. Second, when you do, what we will see a lot here, at least in Massachusetts, is the standard contract, and then we'll have addenda afterward. And sometimes the addenda is in conflict with the standard boilerplate of the purchase and sale. So if something says, A will happen by this date, or buyer can walk out of the contract, and then the addenda, it's not exactly clear, a lot of times the addenda is going to control, because that is more specific than the actual boilerplate language. So if you see things that are in conflict in your purchase and sale, ask about it. Sometimes because it's just overlooked. Other times because one side is like, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to meet this deadline, meet this requirement. So let's put kind of gray, vague language in case it doesn't happen. We can negotiate, or we've got a way out of the contract at that point. And while that, borders on unethical, we could say, it is a good way to make sure that if you're looking at a contract, that it's just as black and white as possible. And unfortunately, contracts aren't always black and white. And that's kind of the third thing I do want to highlight, is that, and again, now is a good time to think about it, is that you want to plan for as many reasonable contingencies in your contract as possible, but you cannot plan for all of them. So trying to, plan, let's just use the example of when you're going to inspect the property. You want to be specific, but you don't want to say, I want to inspect the property on this date at this time. Let's say we've got, something happens and you can't make it at that time. Now all of a sudden you're locked in at that date. So plan for some contingencies, leave some gray areas, and also understand that you are not going to be able to foretell the future. Something may happen that is not going to be in your 10, 20, 30 page purchase and sale, no matter how diligent, no matter how much time you plan into it. So you either want to be as specific as possible, where it's, if this happens, we'll do this, or you want to be general, where here's some general guidelines. If things of these sorts occur, this is going to be the framework for how we're going to behave. And I found that is more useful, working with other attorneys, that's kind of one of the areas that lawyers like to work together here is real estate contracts. They understand things change and that we do need to work together on things like this. So having the ability to be flexible and to, I don't want to say deviate, but to kind of make the right decisions when things change or things that are unforeseeable to occur.
I like it. I really like that perspective, being both specific and vague in your contracts. You do have to have specific dates. You have to have, your inspection period needs to be a certain number of days. That's a very specific number, but you also want to leave in some gray areas in order to give the contract just a little bit of flexibility so both parties can take the contract to close. So on top of that, I know this is kind of a loaded question, but do you have any specific contingencies that you recommend all investors put in their contracts?
It is kind of a loaded question. I like to kind of stay away from all always.
Yep.
But whether you're on the, if you're purchasing a property for investment, and this is kind of taking a step back with my clients, one of the most important things that we work on before we even get to that point of it is having a pretty thought out plan as to why we're purchasing this property for investment, what the use of the property is going to be, what the ideal return is going to be, and how that's set forth. So one thing that I like to see throughout the life of from looking at properties, making the offer, and then going to purchase and sale to closing is that we stick to what we originally set out for. Because unfortunately what happens is we'll get someone, for example, here in Cape Cod who's looking for a second home, a vacation home where they're going to rent it out for the main season from July through September. And then as we go through the process, it either ends up that they don't find the exact property or they're spending a little bit more money and they've got to downsize their home. And now they are deviating from their income plan as when they were going to rent the property out. So now that we've kind of deviated from the main plan, we've got to make sure that we adjust either in contracts or in terms or both to match up with where they are, because we don't want to be 6-9 months after they close and realize, hey, I was expecting this return and I don't have that because we ended up spending more money or we're in a different area, or I'm not getting the weekly or monthly return on what I thought my investment. So one thing that I think is important in any contract for investment or kind of even just if it's a main purchase is that set out a plan even before you start looking at properties and try to stick to that as much as possible and incorporate those terms into your contract. It's very easy to get kind of the romantic part of real estate because there is that emotional piece where there is, where you're living there, if it's a vacation home type thing. We might forget that this is an investment. There's also a very large financial piece. So you want to have a thought out, an actionable plan that you carry through the contract where you're kind of just throwing things away because this is something that you want, you've been looking for longer than you thought. So while it's not exactly answering your question, I do think it's important to kind of have a plan, stick with your plan, and make sure that your contract protects you to reach those milestones and reach the return that you're looking for in the type of property that you're purchasing for investment.
Nope. I like the answer. Have a plan, stick with the plan, and then your purchase and sale should reflect that plan that you've already set out at the beginning. So I like that framework going into it. So this is kind of an oddball question, but it's happened to me a few times. Breaching contract. So what do you do? What do you recommend people do when there are small breaches of contract? For instance, this has happened to me a few times where I didn't get earnest money in on the set date. Just, things happen. For whatever reason, I forgot to put earnest money in, and I put it in, 2 days after the actual set date in the contract. In those instances, I never really did anything. I just went forward in the purchase and sale. And obviously, that's not a huge breach of contract, but it still is a breach of contract. In instances like that, what do you recommend people do? Is it something that you should bring to the attention of the seller? Or is it, one of those things that you just kind of let fly under the radar?
Yeah, that's a good question. My general rule of thumb on something like that, even if it's minor, anytime that you're deviating from what's on paper, the two things you do is disclose and memorialize. Just because if something does change down the line, you don't want to give anybody an out of a contract that you're counting on, especially when there's so many moving parts as a purchase and sale or purchase of real estate. So if the date is missed, if a milestone or something is supposed to happen and doesn't, disclose, memorialize is generally the best advice I can give. That way there is that fallback. There is something that you can add to your contract saying, hey, we talked about this happening, it didn't. We talked about it and we agree this is how it's going to happen instead. As I mentioned before, attorneys sometimes have a not the most collaborative experience working with each other, but generally in real estate, that's not the case because we understand how many moving parts there are. So as long as there is that upfront, the communication piece, and it's not, I'm doing this to try to get a benefit for my client, or I'm trying to rework the agreed to terms of the deals, where it's more of kind of the example that you gave. Hey, this happened. Here's what we're going to do instead. Let's again make just write it down and make it part of our deal.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I loved talking about the contract side. I do want to get a little bit into your coaching side of the business, where you talk about systems and processes, because I mean, in the end, as real estate investors, once you have more than one or two properties, you are running a business. That is what you're doing. It's not a hobby anymore. Now you have a business. So kind of take us into how you coach people about systems and processes. It's something that everybody needs to know. So tell us your basic process when it comes to instructing people on how to develop processes.
Yeah, this is something that I've got into just the last couple of years, and I have been really pleasantly surprised how positively it's been received by other colleagues, other real estate brokers, kind of all over the country. I've been all over the Northeast, so I do have a network that's outside of where I work mainly. But what I find in common when working with others in the business is that there's many different approaches to what have been successful outcomes. And then in talking with these professionals, looking into what has worked is all over the map. So what I try to do is different from most coaches that I've had experience with. Is I'm not trying to tell you you're doing anything wrong, tear down what you know has worked, what might not be working. It's just taking a step back, simplifying or understanding that business model, and then start measuring where we can, Matt. Here's what you're doing. What is the return on your time, your money, your efforts, all of those things? And is that what you were looking for? Because the answer I get from most of the clients that I've worked with is, well, I don't know. Well, why are you doing X if you have no idea if it's working? Well, it kind of ranges from, I feel like I should be doing something with my time, or this is what I see other people doing. So the big thing that I like to focus on is first just having an understanding of what you're doing, and then what is kind of coming back into your business, or how that is the return on your time and money. So that's a conversation that I have kind of up front, that I'm not trying to teach you how to do your job. Most people that I work with are already successful. This is a way to kind of lean out things that aren't working well, or to kind of just understand what minor changes we can implement to either scale up, put in a system, and make it a greater return on what you're doing.
Awesome. I love it. And you said two words that that really rang true for me. You said simplify and measure. And when it comes to nailing down your processes, I really feel that is the crux of it. Actually, before I got into real estate, I was in corporate, and I was a process improvement consultant. And so that's what we did, is we broke everything down into 7 steps. And then your entire business model, you break it into 7 steps, and then you break those individual steps into 7 steps, and you keep going until you have a full process. But so the crux of it, just as you said, simplify and measure, figure out everything you're doing, and figure out what the very core of that process is. And that will give you a little bit more clarity, and then you can put KPI around those individual steps, and start slowly but surely improving those KPI over time. So I love that simplicity of the advice: simplify and measure.
Yeah,
Okay.
my background is also from corporate and process improvement, so we've got that in common as well, and that kind of guides me in seeing the corporate environment, things that kind of work in that big corporate environment versus things that they're amiss. So that working with a smaller business, you can kind of implement that a little bit quicker, and you can get rid of things that aren't working at a much faster pace. It looks like that's the experience you had as well.
I love it. Yep. All right, so I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit here. We've talked a lot about your experience in the legal side and the process side, and I want to go into your actual experiences and your stories now. So it sounds like you've had a fair number of experience, a fair amount of experience in real estate. And we all know that real estate's a roller coaster. You go up, you go down, sideways, left, right. Um, and throughout that process, there's lessons that we learned. So kind of take us to one of the lower parts. One of the hard things that you've went through so far in your real estate experience, and give us the lesson that you learned out of that.
Sure. Yeah, as I mentioned, I started off in New York, and I grew up in Massachusetts, came back to Boston. So most of my professional career that's where I started, New York and Boston. And for the most part, in real estate in the corporate world, it's a meritocracy. If you're good at what you do, if you provide a service, you provide a product to your clients, you're going to do well. And that was kind of the lesson, I learned from being in those markets, that work hard, do well, provide a product or service people want, and it's going to be in demand. Uh, in transitioning, I've been here on Cape Cod now for 7 years and worked here for almost 5. And what I have realized, and what was kind of difficult up front for me, was that being kind of better, providing something of value just wasn't enough. That it was a market that also kind of relied on, and this was strange coming from, again, process improvement, that this is how we've done it in the past. This is what I'm accustomed to do. This is what I like. So just because you're telling me that you're good, that just because you're telling me you're better, and even if you have results to prove those things, I don't care, because I'm comfortable with how things are working, or I'm comfortable with what I've done in the past. So for me, that was surprising, and it was also a real big change, and it was something I had to learn to adapt with. So as far as the clients I work with here, that word of mouth, what has A, B, and C, or what have they told me about you, people that I know, people that I work with, people that I trust, that is as important, if not more, than the service and the product that you're providing, because it is that kind of marketing. So that was hard, and that was a real change for me. And real estate is ultimately hyper local, because you're buying a piece of property that sits in one place most of the time. So that's one thing that as far as difficult, it was that I was very surprised that it's it's not always that the best, quickest, what you're looking for that is better necessarily is going to kind of win out in the end. That there's multiple things that compete for business here in the market, and kind of understanding all those things was a little bit of a change for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure it's got to be 100% of the guests that have been on here have, in some way, shape, or form, said that real estate is first and foremost a relationship business. And so that is sometimes when you know that you have a good product, it can be hard to realize that that's not always the case. That is the most important thing. You need to have the relationships in order to move that to the market. So I'm glad that it's a good lesson learned. And then once you go that, you just keep going. So we're getting on to the end here, and we do try to keep these around 25 minutes. And so I want to ask one more question. You said it yourself. You've been in real estate for, it sounds like, 7 years now, or a little bit more. And so going back to the Michael that was 7 years past, and he's just getting into real estate. You just got into your corporate data side of things. If you could go back to him and give him one piece of advice going forward, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, it's been a little bit more than 7 years, but one piece of advice that kind of would have been helpful then and still helpful now is just remembering, in a relationship, in a client-driven business, that it's not about you. And going back to, again, that first day where you show up with just a telephone and a stack of papers. I don't want to make these phone calls. What are they going to say to me? It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter. It's, who am I calling? What value can I provide to them? And how can I improve this transaction from their point of view? So, and that has helped me so much in understanding that, approaching clients here, it's, I don't want to go to this event. I don't want to have, I'm nervous about this. Turn it around, think about where they're coming from, what they're looking for. And all of a sudden, I'm not as nervous. I don't have as much pressure. And it's like, I can actually do something for you. Let me think about it from this point of view. And it makes it easier for me, and it provides more value for them. So understanding that earlier would have been really helpful. And it's something still that I need to remind myself, I don't want to pick up the phone. I'm just scared, nervous about this. Again, not about you. Think about it from how you can benefit or provide value to them, and put yourself in their shoes. So that's something that I always need to remind myself that would be good to know earlier on.
I love it. That is a great piece of advice and something that I've been, even to today, I have to remind myself, it's not about you. In the end, we're serving people. We are serving, helping people in their own lives. And whenever you feel that tinge of fear or whatever it is, the hesitation, because of your ego, because of, or just fear in general, you got to remember it's not about you. It's about the other person. It's about helping people. And so just keep pushing through that, and try not to make it reflect back on yourself. So Michael, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm sure I can speak for everybody listening and watching that we appreciated the wisdom that you shared with us today. If somebody did want to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. You can also find me at Welcome to Cape Cod on Instagram and Facebook. And we are relaunching our Accomplished RE website, so that'll be relaunched soon. But LinkedIn's probably the best way.
Perfect. So you heard it from him. He's got a website, but LinkedIn is the best way to go. I will put that in the show notes. So if you want to get in contact with Michael, reach out there. Again, Michael, thank you for coming on. And for everybody listening and watching, we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thanks, Gabe. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Investing Club. If you've watched this far, I'm sure you've gotten a little bit of value out of this. So we would appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up, share it with your friends or family, whatever it may be. And if you'd like to share or partner with us on a deal, we absolutely love partnering on deals and are always looking for quality projects. Go to www.therealestateinvestingclub.com to get in contact with one of our partners. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.